The 10-hour hostage ordeal at the Texas Synagogue over the weekend, it has now emerged that the hostages weren't released or freed, they escaped. The rabbi of the synagogue says that he threw a chair at the terrorist so that they could make their escape, and has credited active shooter training for helping him save his congregants. Our correspondent Jodie Cohn spoke with Mordecai Dzi-Kansky on the incident, and he is a retired NYPD detective, a specialist in terrorism awareness training, and an associate of the Institute for Counterterrorism in Israel. Listen in.
Now, Mordecai, you've trained thousands of trainers across the US in how to counter an active shooter and other dangerous situations. What advice would you give to communities in how to stay safe faced with such terrifying circumstances?
First and foremost, make the community leaders actually tell the congregants or whoever is attending that they are responsible. In other words, we like Big Brother, we love Big Brother, but we can't rely on Big Brother. So when circumstances happen that something is going on, we have to rely on ourselves. And I think Texas was an unbelievable example of how well the training that happened prior and that the end result fortunately worked out the way it was.
And what practical measures would you say people individually could take if they're faced with such a situation?
First and foremost, if there's a stranger, you have to be stranger careful. In other words, just keep an eye on it. Embrace people, but also keep a little bit of distance, meaning that you realize what's going on. Have a plan in your head what you're going to do if, God forbid, a situation happens, how you're going to handle it. So there are many things we can do, but number one is understand that security is not their responsibility, meaning law enforcement or anybody else. It's our responsibility, meaning the people who are involved in a congregation, a church, a mosque, a synagogue, but it's up to us.
Now, Mordecai, you've trained thousands of trainers across the US. How do you think Malik Akram, the hostage taker who was investigated by MI5, was able to get into the US? Where did the authorities slip up?
I can't speak for any side, but on the flip side, I could say, based on COVID, things are all backwards, meaning that I'm hoping it was a COVID mistake, meaning that based on circumstance, whatever else might be. I would hate to think there's anything nefarious involved, and I don't think there is. I know there is not. I hope there's not. But on the flip side, I know we're not dealing under the normal umbrella that we normally do to vet people coming into the U.S.
So Akram was demanding the release of Afia Siddiqui, the al-Qaeda terrorist convicted of trying to kill U.S. Army officers. With her still in prison, do you think that there's a risk of copycat attacks?
Listen, any time there is a poster child for terrorists specifically to sort of feel like they are trying to follow up based on what they're doing, it's always a problem. Listen, their terrorist exchanges have happened for years and years and years. By the way, they don't work. So therefore, we should never even think about that. I mean, this wasn't even an option. But on the flip side, thank God he was so inept, because, this actually is the poster example of how one of these attacks should happen. Hostages are safe, terrorist is dead, now we go on.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.